Alex, should I feel guilty about drinking so much?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. You should feel miserable and guilty, and you should go around in a little corner and cry yourself to sleep because you haven't given enough to the altar of social justice. Drink some tea. It's very good for you.
Well, cheers to you too. Anyway,
let's talk a little bit more about guilt. We could define it, but how would you define guilt?
Guilt, my grandfather defined it for me when I was 12. We were playing chess one day, and I asked him, I said, Grandpa, the kids at school say that we should feel very guilty because we have a lot of money. My grandfather was a multimillionaire during 1929 when his colleagues were jumping out of windows, okay? And he emerged very wealthy. He said two things to me. He said, I said, behind every great fortune, he said, is a major crime. I looked at him, I go, whoa. Did my grandpa just tell me that he was a major criminal? Yes, he did.
You never found out what he actually did.
He said, and I never want you to ask me that again. He said, now concerning your classmates, he said, I want to tell you something. You should never succumb to guilt. Guilt is the interest paid on a debt that you never owed in the first place. And that's always stuck with me for my entire life. I've thought about it every day of my life. I always have a moment in my life where the whole guilt thing arises, and as it does in all of our lives.
It's a natural human thing to do.
It is. I see people at the grocery store. I see people at school. I see people everywhere who are infected with the pangs, what I call pangs of guilt. Now, there's Catholic guilt, there's Jewish guilt, I'm supposed there's Armenian guilt. You're going to tell me about Armenian guilt. Every ethnic group has their own profile of guilt. But basically what they have all in common, the common denominator, to my thinking, is that guilt is a sense of remorse for something that you did over which you no longer have any control. It's important, that last part.
To a certain degree, to a certain degree, you're right to a certain degree, but I think that there definitely are, the feeling is a bigger thing than what's contained in your definition. Oh. There's many different flavors and forms and sources of said guilt. As you went through, there's male guilt, there's parent guilt, there's whatever, survivor's guilt, whatever.
Yeah.
All tons of different sources.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And you may not be, maybe you are in control of the source of the guilt, maybe you have no control over the source of the guilt. What I do want to stress, though, is that without guilt makes, if done correctly, I believe can be used to make people better. Because if people had absolutely no regrets, they had absolutely no guilt, no shame whatsoever, they would never improve. They would never try and get better. Now, the problem is that there's moral failures, and then there's sort of practical failures, like, oh, I didn't make enough money, I didn't do this one, move in my business, and I feel so guilty for missing this opportunity. That's a stupid guilt.
Yeah.
Get over that. Learn, don't let that chain you down and hold you back.
Yeah.
Now, I would point out moral guilt is instituted, in my belief, is instituted by the very nature of existence. Because if you lie, if you do something wrong, you should feel guilty because that is a moral imperfection. Now, you can't, undo what you've done. That's just the nature of being in time and space. Mm. But at the same time, you are called to the higher standard. So this is when I get into the redemptive aspect, that we need somebody from the same source that we get our guilt from, our moral guilt, only from that same source can it be extinguished away.
Well, I agree in part, and I dissent in part to what you just said. I certainly
and the world still turns.
I agree in part what you said about the fact that we carry guilt around. That guilt actually can do some good. I agree with that. For instance, confession. And if a criminal is apprehended for a crime that the criminal knows that they have committed, and they plead guilty, I have a great respect for those people.
Yeah.
Because they're showing remorse.
Some of them are doing it because they might get a better deal. Yada yada.
Well, that's always the case. Yeah, but that's okay. That's okay.
Sure.
A better deal is okay because society has a right to extract its pound of flesh for wrongdoing. I mean, Socrates proved that the state had a right to execute him, and that's why he didn't walk out of the cell door when it was left open for him. He drank the poison. So we have to distinguish between guilt and remorse, and we have to distinguish between how long we're going to remain guilty. One of the wonderful things about the Jewish Orthodox religion is their practice of Shiva. I don't know if you know about Shiva. Do you know about Shiva?
Doesn't matter if I know. Our audience doesn't know.
Okay, well, Shiva is the Orthodox Hebrew practice of honoring the dead. When someone dies with an Orthodox Jew house, they practice Shiva. And Shiva is a 7-day period of time where relatives come over and do the cooking and the cleaning, and they do all of the necessary things of life for the aggrieved family. The windows are shut, drapes are drawn, the telephone is unhooked, the doorbell is unhooked. There's no communication with the outside world for 7 days. And for 7 days, the aggrieved family, they take the clothing of the deceased, they smell it, they touch it, they tell stories about the deceased, they look at pictures, they kiss the pictures, they tell more stories, and it goes on for 7 days, the Shiva. 7 days of mourning and grief, and they excrete, they excrete the grief, really. And then after the 7th day, the windows are unbarred and unclosed, the windows are open, the relatives leave, and the family, they never mention the deceased ever again. That's Shiva. I have the greatest respect for that for 2 reasons. First of all, it admits of the fact that there is remorse and there is grief and there's even guilt. Because in every family, as we know, we all have regrets about things that we should have probably done, but it's gone. The second thing is, I love the way they excrete the grief and they don't carry it around as baggage anymore. More families are destroyed. More marriages are destroyed. More families are destroyed. I saw it in my own family, Irish guilt in my family, Catholic guilt in my family. They're destroyed by carrying this baggage throughout a lifetime and infecting your children with it. And they infect their children with it. And it goes on for generations. It's really sick.
Yeah.
That's my treatment on guilt.
Interesting thing you make there. Now, I unfortunately I don't know many Turkish people, so I'd love to have a conversation with somebody about this. What do the Turks think about Turkish guilt? Because obviously, not all Germans, but a lot of Germans have a lot of guilt. I get, understandably so.
German politics today is based upon guilt of the Holocaust.
Exactly. So when you have Turks on the other, but you see the Germans, they admit they committed the Holocaust. The Turks, on the other hand, they do not admit they've committed the Armenian genocide. Right. It's almost like a coping mechanism of the guilt, I would say.
Have you made any attempt while you were in Washington to go to the Turkish embassy or maybe meet some Turkish people?
I did. I actually wrote a story on one of them.
You did.
And he basically explained to me how the Armenian genocide never happened, and and then I also talked to another guy, explained to me how the Armenians were the people that committed the genocide. And yeah. So I mean, I don't know what it might be just a Middle Eastern thing to just have a very, very, and I say this as a Middle Eastern person, to have a lot of thick skull between what your inner soul is and what you are willing to expose.
Well, once you admit your guilt, you have to ask for forgiveness. All right?
Exactly.
This is why religion plays a very important part in people's lives. I'm not an anti-religious person, although I don't practice a religion. I understand the function of a religion in people's lives. And this is one of the key functions, I think, is that when you're carrying a lot of guilt around and you finally admit the guilt and you then go through the stage of remorse, the next stage is what? Forgiveness. You have to ask for forgiveness. And reconciliation is not possible without those stages.
No.
I wrote a whole blog about this, by the way.
I actually wrote a whole blog on this too. There's actually two kinds of horrible, horrible, horrible people.
Yeah.
And they become this way because of guilt. The first are the people that wallow in guilt. They ask for help. They ask for guilt in places that people didn't even think existed. I didn't even know. There's there's white guilt. People that are guilty just for existing as a white person. Male guilt. And then there's cis guilt. Yeah. What a cisgender person is a person that is not transgender, basically. So basically, for not being transgender, they feel guilty. That is one of the stupidest things to feel guilty for. That's one side of the coin. People that just take on guilt, and maybe the guilt is legitimate or not. They just love their guilt and they cling to it. The other kind is the person that has no shame whatsoever. They do whatever they want, and they do not care how wicked, evil, destructive, or malevolent it is. They have no shame.
Right.
They have when you see somebody with a T-shirt that says #no regrets or something like that.
I've never seen that.
Oh, well, it can go either way. I mean, either they're a very carefree and happy person that's
they're gay. They're gay.
Yeah, that could be that. Or they could be a person that really does not care about the consequences of their evil actions. Because every person has done something evil in their lives. Everyone. So those are the two people who poorly or use guilt.
This is a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer. Do you regret?
Yes. Okay, fine.
Do you regret anything in your life?
There's no way I'm not going to answer that.
No, don't answer that question. I'm just saying. No. I can answer the question, and I have no regrets.
Mm-hmm. It all depends on how you define regrets. Because we talked about the definition of guilt. We didn't really talk much about the definition of regrets. And I think that it's like a Venn diagram. There's overlap. And as I explained earlier, the feeling that comes with guilt is a very big umbrella term. And I think that guilt, regret, shame, they all fit in there somewhere. And to a certain degree, there are good parts, healthy parts of each, but also dangerous parts of each.
I define regret as the impulse to ask for forgiveness before it's too late.
Really? Regret, the impulse to ask for forgiveness before it's too late.
Yeah, for instance, a lot of people, they have regrets concerning their family, especially parents, okay? And they never really level with their parents before the end of the life of the parent. So the parent dies, and the individual has not resolved and asked for forgiveness. And it eats away at them like a cancer, and they pass this on to their kids. It's really tragic. I've seen it so much in my own family. Amazing. So I have made a point in all of my life. I do have had regrets. I regret certain things. There's nothing I can do. I can't change it, but I can ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
So asking for confession and forgiveness are very important things in human psychology.
Yes. Yes. This goes back into the facts versus feelings debate. Yes, facts are more important than your feelings, but feelings are
important. They're very important.
They're present, and the fact that the feeling exists is a fact.
But they are not dispositive. They do not rule. Feelings do not rule reality. Feelings are a part of reality.
If you look at the people that are wrapped up in wallowing in guilt, they have let their feelings drive the bus.
Well, Alex, cheers to you, and here's to people who don't wallow.
I have no regrets with this podcast. So.
I hate wallowers.
Among other things.
I want to drink to all wallowers. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Mm-hmm. Auf Wiedersehen. We have to say goodbye to